How you doing, everybody? It's Carpo. It's raining out, so I hope it doesn't get too heavy and drown out my words. But if it does, then I guess nature has got something more important to say than I do. The recent videos I've made have been about more of occult type teachings. Hermeticism has been a focus lately, and I wanted to address the issue of why. Why is Hermeticism important? Why are occult teachings important? I've been into these things for many years, but I've learned very quickly on YouTube that when you begin talking about occult teachings, you instantly became labeled a heretic, you're a sinner, you're instantly scathed by the religious community. Those who are not religious are more or less indifferent to it. And the people who have carried this lamp, the people who have passed on the torch through history, have done so under persecution, under scrutiny. Men were burned at the stake for not renouncing their thoughts that they can find truth themselves. Burned by the new religions as they came up and came forth. I don't understand why it's so difficult for Christians to admit that their religion came from Egypt. And any Christian scholar knows that the story of, the virgin birth, all of this was taken from Egyptian mythology, Horus and Isis. Looking further back, you can see it in Sumerian culture, you can see it reflected in all the other cultures. The question is, why can't we admit it? And what does it all mean? Now, this subject being difficult to discuss, I'm going to try to do my best. If all one has to do to look back through history to see where we trace our lineage as far as our beliefs, our true beliefs, is to go to the capital, Washington, D.C., and see the Egyptian architecture that we used there. And the symbolism behind many of the paintings, many of the construction projects that were done in the capital reflect our earliest roots. This has been through many changes. When we look back at history, what we see is a line of events. At least this is the way I see it, and by my observation of others, this is the way most people see it. We have a very skewed view of what really happened. We say, okay, in the 1500s this happened with Christianity, in the 1200s this happened and this was written. This happened in 500 BC. We're talking about 1,000-year periods of time here. Thousands of years. In fact, one of the most revealing, points I could make would be that we are closer now to the time when Cleopatra reigned in Egypt, to the time when Cleopatra, from the distance in time that Cleopatra was to the beginning of Egyptian culture. We're closer to the end of Egyptian culture than the end was to the beginning. And these cultures go back so many thousand years. So if somebody says, what's the difference between 5,000 and 6,000 years? It's a lot. In the standards that men carried these ideas for thousands of years. And the truth about when some of the temples in Egypt were handed over to Christianity. In other words, Egypt knew it was over. It knew that its culture, its religion was dying out. Christianity was taking over, so they actually asked, in some cases, for Christians to take over their temples. Not realizing that they're using Egyptian stories, but the Egyptians realized that they were, and so they said, well, we have to carry on these ideas in one way or another. My issue's never been with the Bible. My belief is that the Bible is a phenomenal piece of literature that has a lot of great information in it if people would just look past taking it literally. It's such a simple thing. But when I used to look at ancient history and look at the cultures when I was young, and I used to think, well, why did they believe such silly things? What purpose could they have to believe these things? And the older I get, the more I realize it's because these ideas endure. When the Bible was written, when many of these books were written, the authors had to convey a message, an archetype, and they had to do it in a form where the people would understand. Something as simple as a virgin birth would gain people's understanding better than trying to explain to someone a Holy Trinity through the symbolism of metaphors and trying to get someone a literal interpretation of this. And I think this was an understanding that they had, that you can't really explain these things. That in order to observe God, you observe it reflected through nature. You observe the world around us to see what it consists of. In other words, science will never answer the deepest questions. It is a matter of knowing. It's a matter that goes beyond science or faith, and isn't one that's worth arguing. I feel it, and others feel it, and I see now why those who have gone to the mystery schools, those who have started to delve into these things, tend to withdraw from society because of the persecution. Which brings me to my point. Why am I speaking out on them? It's because after hearing all the horrific stories of the men who have come before me, who have learned these things, and who have been persecuted, killed and burned and maimed and tortured in the name of theology, which is a misunderstanding and misrepresentation of the original teachings. In other words, they're basically crucifying their own teachers, their own elders. I feel in today's world we finally have a chance to speak out without fear of a witch hunt. In other words, I can sit and I can say what I want, and I can put it on the internet, and I can speak from a rational point of view, and others can do the same thing. And eventually the wisdom of the ages will drown out the short-sighted dogma of philosophy, or of theology, and philosophy will take over and reign supreme as the doctrine of man. It's a very simple concept to see that we are all one, and if we don't live together in harmony, then it causes us problems. It's a very simple observation. So now I wanted to talk for a moment about how we view the history, what I meant by, our skewed view. Often when people hear about the Hermetic teachings and these old philosophers, what's a picture that conjures in your mind when you think of alchemy and philosophy? A bunch of guys sitting around in robes and beards, mixing metals, trying to discover this philosopher's stone. All of that is archetypal. It wasn't men with beards, it was men and women of all walks of life. There were women who ran many of these mystery schools too. Unfortunately, the church has oppressed women for so long that the history of women has been burned. And the burning of books and the burning of knowledge is the single most shameful thing that the church has done in history. Is to persecute knowledge, because truth should stand apart from having to eliminate everything else. In other words, if you have a scientific theory that you think is right, you don't kill every other scientist that has a different theory to make sure that yours is right. But that's exactly what religion has done. When I say religion, I mean theology. A religion can be a system of beliefs that is harmful to none, but so far that hasn't been shown to be possible, at least with our current system. And we're fighting amongst each other. So, when we look back in history and say, what were these people really like? They were like you and me, everyone. It wasn't a bunch of wise men sitting around, it was wise and unwise. It was those who were in various stages and processes. This humility that we think we have to have, it's very important to have that in order to carry these ideas, but remember that there are different personality types, so we don't have to put ourselves down for the way that we convey our message. In other words, some people are a little more preachy, some people are a little more withdrawn, some people are well-spoken, some people are well-written, some people are neither. So I navigate the possibilities and utilize the tools that are given to me, which I am fortunately very good at writing and grammar. I don't have any problems with punctuation, that kind of thing, so I enjoy writing. And I know how to spell, and I've always enjoyed writing, so I use that to my advantage by writing about things that are important to me. One day I might publish those things, I don't know. But YouTube has become the outlet that authors used to use. I can let the universe speak through me. It's rare that I go back and watch one of my own videos, but every time I do, I just can't believe it's me talking. It doesn't seem like the things I would say. In other words, much of what I learn comes from myself and my subconscious, and I realize that. I acknowledge that. I also acknowledge that many of the ideas that have been written down and so strongly defended through history have been true, but they've been archetypal. They've been described as the best method we can have to describe the world around us. And so far, when it really comes down to capital T truth, it's unknowable by mortal man as far as the ultimate purpose of everything, but we're struggling really hard to try to pretend like we know. By creating a closed system of belief, it allows us to set that aside from the world we live in and to live the way we want to and to continue on our materialistic plight that this society is so enamored with. So my intention is never to knock religion, but it seems like every time I make a video, a point comes up where I find a way to fit it in. But it's the dogmatic beliefs that I'm opposed to. It's the people who say, you can only know things my way, that just don't get it. And they'll never get it. And no matter what kind of a discussion you may have with the person who is sucked into that paradigm, they will never get it, and they never want to get it. They will make you look like the worst person that they possibly can. They will tell you all the things that you've done wrong, all the things that you need to do to better yourself. They will project every shortcoming of their own system onto your system. They will tell you you're unhappy. They'll tell you that you're delusional. They will tell you that you're creating a false sense of security for yourself, when anybody who studies these things knows that's the exact opposite. The idea is that there is no security. There never was security given by the world around us. The security comes from within. And it comes from our acknowledgement that when something happens, we have to perceive it. We have to transmute it into something good. And that's what alchemy is all about. And that's where all the symbolism lies. It's irrelevant whether any of these figures in history really existed. It's irrelevant whether anyone ever turned lead into gold. None of that matters. All that matters is that we understand what it means to the individual. I just hope more people figure it out, because it's a much healthier state of mind to know and to feel than to assume and judge, hate. I guess that's it.